Trying to change things. You're not.
Good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order, the Wednesday, November 15th, Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission. Second item on our agenda is the hearing of residents. Do we have anybody signed up? No? Okay. Item number 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda. Gentlemen, is there anything that you would like to pull off and discuss separately? The holiday mood, huh?
Mr. Chairman, I move, if you accept the motion, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Mr. Breaux. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Greenwald. Any other discussion? All right, we'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda, items for individual consideration. Item A, PC 2017-033, consider an act upon a request for approval of a preliminary plat of the Crossvine Module 2, Unit 1 subdivision, an approximate 15-acre tract of land generally located 1,000 feet southwest of the intersection of FM 1518 and Lower Seguin Road, City of Schertz, Bexar County, Texas. Chenery.
Good evening. The applicant is Schertz 1518, and they are requesting approval of a preliminary plat for the proposed garden homes at the Crossvine development. The preliminary plat is Module 2, Unit 1 of the Crossvine subdivision. The site is approximately 15 acres and is located about 1,000 feet southwest of the intersection of 1518 and Lower Seguin Road. On this exhibit here is outlined in green. Here's Lower Seguin Road, FM 1518, and the subject site is right here, just north of Trellis Walk. The site is currently vacant and undeveloped, and the applicant is requesting to plat the lots consistent with the GH3 land use category of the Crossvine Plan Development District, which was recently amended with Ordinance 17S01 to incorporate new development standards for the GH3 land use designation. Each lot is proposed to be 40 feet wide by 88 feet deep for a total square footage of 3,300 square feet per lot. The product type is planned to be detached single-family garden homes with a 10-foot separation between each residential structure. The project will include 2 points of access that connect to FM 1518 and Hollering Vine. On this exhibit here, this is Trellis Walk, which is one of the 2 points of access. To the top here, this is FM 1518, and on the other side of the proposed subdivision is Saginite Road, which is the second point of access. that's included with this plat. Both Saginite Road and Trellis Walk are planned as 60-foot collector streets, which is consistent with the Crossvine PDD roadway sections that were approved. TxDOT has provided a no objection letter for the project. The subsequent slides are just each of the sheets that zoom into the lots that are proposed with this preliminary plat. So I'll go back to the main sheet that shows the overall exhibit. Parkland requirements have been satisfied with the Crossvine BDD incorporating into the master plan walking trails, several pocket parks throughout the Crossvine development, a 13-acre public park now referred to as Heritage Park, and open space exceeding 15%, plus an amenity center in Module 1, Unit 1. The site is serviced by City of Schertz for water and sewer, CPS for electricity, and AT&T and Time Warner for cable and internet. All public improvements associated with this plat are required to be installed prior to recording of the final plat. And I wanted to point out a unique situation with this preliminary plat. On the upper left-hand corner, right here where the cursor's circling, there's a triangular segment that is a portion of the Trainer Hale Road right-of-way. And this portion is incorporated in this preliminary plat, but then, as you have noticed in the staff report, we had recommended a conditional approval, and the condition is that this right-of-way is abandoned prior to approval of the final plat. So the first reading of the ordinance to abandon the right-of-way was presented to excuse me, the City Council yesterday evening, and the second reading is scheduled for November 28th. So by the time the final plat comes in, we're assuming that the second reading will go smoothly and that this right-of-way will be abandoned. Here's a zoomed-in section. The majority of this right-of-way is going to wind up being rededicated as public right-of-way and become a part of Saginite Road. And then there's a small portion at the very end here that will be included in this plat, and it would be a part of the common landscape buffer area adjacent to FM 1518. Staff recommends approval with the condition that the portion of Trainer Hale Road right-of-way abutting this property is formally abandoned by the city prior to final plat approval. And I know I spoke to a representative for Schertz 1518, and they were planning on attending. I'm not sure, maybe perhaps they're stuck in traffic, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, commissioners?
I need help. I didn't have my magnifying glass today, and there's a few things I can't find. On sheet 4 of 5, there is a lot labeled, I believe it's 8, that wraps around from 5, 6, 7, and it wraps around to the roadway. I can't find lot 8, or at least read it, by block number, if it's intended to be in note 11, because I can't find the blocks on this particular sheet that tells me what blocks these two sides of the street represent.
Okay,
So can you tell me the block numbers? This is block 7, I'm assuming, but,
yes, sir. This is block 7.
all right, what's the one across the street?
So it is a little difficult to see, but on the very bottom row, south of Chatside, within lot 5, you'll see there is the reference to block 7.
Yes. Now, across the street, I don't find the block number across the street.
Oh, on the northern side of Chat side.
Yep.
Okay, so that would be a continuation of block 6
Well, it should have been on this plat.
from sheet 3.
Okay? Go back to 3 and tell me what it is. Yeah, I'll write it down. Block 6.
I think it's block 6.
It is, sir. I'll be sure to make a note of it and discuss it with the project engineer
Supposed to
to
be on this
have it
particular
included
page.
for the final plat.
Okay? We haven't answered the question yet, what is Lot 8 being used for?
Lot 8 is going to be common property, and I believe that portion is, when comparing it to the conceptual layout, that will include a parking court. So the GH3, the development standards with the third PDD amendment included the provision to provide parking courts as additional parking spaces for visitors. And so there are sections throughout this subdivision that you will notice on sheet 1, or excuse me, on sheet 2 between lots 13 and 14. And then on sheet 4 between, excuse me, 3 on between lots 6 and 7, and then sheet 4, lot 8, those will include additional parking spaces.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. If these are going to be parking lots, shouldn't they be so labeled rather than just left blank? It doesn't say that I can find anywhere that any of
On
these
sheet 1,
three-
Commissioner, if you look at the chart on sheet 1.
The chart on sheet 1.
Chart on sheet 1,
I'm on sheet 1.
right-hand side, about 2 inches down.
Well, it says landscape lot / public access. That includes parking lots?
Yes, sir.
And the reason they're not labeled as parking lots or parking stalls is as a function of platting. Those portions are the common HOA lots. So those parking stalls are going to be something that's improved as part of, and the responsibility of the HOA. So we don't depict the parking stalls on preliminary plats.
It does. Landscape, public access. But, yeah. Public access is green space to me. It is not a parking lot. I'm sorry. There's a difference, guys.
Yeah, Commissioner, again, I think Channery just explained that. If you want to know the use of it, we can tell you how they plan to use it, which may be different than how it's labeled on the plat. So yeah, if your question initially was it's not labeled, it is labeled, it's referenced on sheet 1. But again, as Channery explained, they're going to use it for parking, but it's not a public improvement, so it wouldn't be shown on the plat.
Chandler, can you help me out? Where do I see the block number? I can see the lot numbers, but where does it?
So on sheet 1 of 5, there's reference to the block numbers.
All the way back there.
If you notice, closest to 1518, Lot 1, which is the landscape area, there's Block 1 is referenced close to, on the right-hand side, close to Trellis Walk, and then Block 2 is the first kind of pod of lots there, just north of,
Thank you.
okay.
You got me in the right place. Thank you.
Note 11 describes the property as private parkland with public access. Now, private parkland, in my recollection in this city for the last, has never been parking lots. So what I'm trying to say is there's something not represented properly by this plat. So if we're going to turn these things into parking lots, then we need to say so. But we don't need to call them parkland. And/or you better make a notification because you're going to have to come back in and change what's zoned as parkland to turn it into a parking lot.
Yeah, so Commissioner, if you'll recall back, and maybe in hindsight, because it's been a couple of months, we should have provided the zoning report and the attachments. You may recall they have public green space serving those areas. So I believe their reference to parkland is it's got common green space for folks around the parking lot. If the commissioner wants to make a recommendation to delve into the exact wording of that, you can certainly do that with your recommendation.
I think this perhaps will help as well. Let me see. So this is one of the exhibits from the Third Amendment of the Crossvine PDD, and right here is FM 1518. And here is on the preliminary plat exhibit, this is Saginite Road, this is Trellis Walk. And as you'll notice, all the areas indicated in green here, those are the landscape lots or common area that will be maintained by the HOA. And as you can see, the conceptual exhibit shows proposed parking stalls within those landscape areas. And that is something that is addressed in the third PDD amendment for Crossvine.
The parking stalls have been addressed to the commission, and the commission agreed with those things being, but they're just off-road. We're not going into the green space to cut a parking lot. We have parking spots that are parallel, head-in, off the road. Is that not correct?
Maybe restate exactly so I can give you a technical answer, if you wouldn't mind.
Chandler, could you pull that diagram down?
Well, we're looking at this one right here right now,
The lot that we're actually looking at, would that show on there?
and what you're seeing is where they're doing is these
Push it up.
go into the green space.
Yeah, 'cause I
See those?
think it's
But
down.
what they are
There you go.
is you're able to
Thank
come
you.
down the road, and you're able to pull straight in off the road, and those were put where the kiosks were, where the mail stations were. And that was, we approved that, but we did not approve turning the rest of that green space into a parking lot. That's what I'm trying to say. So are we talking about this and this only? Yes. Or are we talking about putting a parking lot in the green space? And if we are, then calling it parkland, dedicating it as parkland is not right. But those parking spots that were head-in off of that roadway were put there for the folks to be able to drive to whatever point and pick up their mail.
I guess what Commissioner Evans is driving at, and maybe restating this to clarify, is that my feeling is that he's looking for compliance with this conceptual plan, that we're going to have just the head-in parking, and not that more of that area is going to be converted into parking, just what's in this conceptual map.
Okay. So how would you like to, I mean, again, staff has the authority if they build it and it's not in compliance with the zoning, which Channery has the graphic up, we wouldn't approve plans for that. We wouldn't approve to allow the filing of the plat. If you wish to, again,
But how are you gonna know that? It's not on this plat.
Again, Commissioner, when we approve the construction drawings, in part, those are reference to the zoning. And so again, we check both the zoning and the plat and the other codes that apply, and if it's not in compliance, we don't approve it. So certainly if the commission isn't comfortable, you have a couple of options. You can table and take no action and offer some direction to go back. You can come up on the dais with wording you feel more appropriate to the easement, and then the applicant can choose to take whatever action in response to that they wish, or in theory, you could deny the plat.
We just saw the applicant come in, so maybe we bring her up to speed real quick and let her answer the question.
Can I ask Mr. Evans a question? What was your comment about parkland, dedicated parkland?
Note 11 says we're dedicating these lots, whatever they are, by block and lot number, we are dedicating them as parkland open to the public.
Where does it say that, Commissioner?
Note 11.
You want to read that out loud?
Yes, sir.
I don't think it says that, with all due respect.
No, what I'm reading here, it says note 11, the 3.99 acres of private parkland with public access identified as Lot 1, Block 1, Lot 18, Block 2, Lot 18, Block 3, Lot 9, Block 4, Lot 11, Block 5, Lot 19, Block 6, Lot 8, Block 7, which is the one under discussion,
Yes, sir.
and Lot 9, Block 7 will be maintained by the owner-developer and/or its successor or assigns.
Yes, sir. That's exactly what it says. And so you may recall the concept were to have these green spaces available to everyone in the development, and that was the language that the applicant chose to use to clarify that's what it's for. Staff doesn't take any issue with that. If the commission wishes to reword that, we're certainly open to hearing suggestions.
Well, all parkland has access for parking, does it not? And wouldn't that apply in this case, that if we want to call it parkland, which note 11 does, parkland has to have access to parking?
Sure, that would be a common feature in parkland, is to have parking associated with it, yes, sir. And that's consistent with the zoning exhibit, which governs the property, which would dictate the minimum and maximum requirements for parking.
If I might ask for a little educational enlightenment here. This is the plat that so this is the way they actually want to develop the property. And what is the diagram that you're showing on the screen? What is that from?
So the diagram on the screen is the conceptual plan that was included as part of the Crossvine PDD amendment that incorporated the land use standard, development standards for the newly introduced at that time GH3 land use designation, which was a garden home concept that as part of our review process, we requested a conceptual layout of what they envisioned. And this is the diagram that was included with the PDD amendment that was adopted.
Okay, so it's not from the original master plan. It's from that amendment that I remember very well.
Yes, sir.
And I think in this case, it looks like a step in the right direction, because if you compare the two, there's a lot missing. They've eliminated one of the lots and made that lot 8 a little bit bigger. But I guess where I start to get confused in the whole process people bring us diagrams and they say, here's what we're going to do, and we take our stamp and we say, yeah, we like that, approved. And then down the road, they come back in with something different. So you can you see where I'm coming from?
Yes, sir. And again, this is a conceptual plan that was adopted with the PDD amendment. The conceptual plan at that time had 81 dwelling units. Here's the summary. And since then, as the developer, as the applicant and project engineer work through the specific configuration, lot size, and layout, the total lot count has actually reduced to a proposed 77 residential lots. So while it has changed, we compare it to the conceptual layout and see that the number of units has reduced, and it has not substantially changed from what the conceptual plan depicted.
And in this case, again, I'll say it looked like a step in the right direction, that they're not getting as many homes in there as they thought they originally might. But what would the impact be if they come in the other way and they found out they could put 90 houses on does that make a difference?
Commissioner, if I may, to sort of part of what we try to do with the Crossvine PDD and some of the other large PDDs is we make reference to minor amendments and major amendments. And the PDD that the commission recommends, the language in it that you recommend approval of, allows staff discretion to approve those minor amendments. And then that goes on to council and they approve it that way. And obviously we have descriptive language to try to describe what's a minor, what's a major, and it's a judgment call. And so typically the concern for the commission and the community is, what's the maximum number of lots I'm going to get? If you want to go up, that tends to be a major amendment. If you want to come down a couple, that tends to be a minor, because the issue is not increasing the number of lots, it's decreasing it. And the benefit of having that language is you allow some flexibility from the zoning stage to, as they go forward and start spending a lot of money on full-blown engineering design drawings and say, hey, can't quite make the drainage work, I need to give a little more right-of-way here, the tangent of the curve doesn't work, I can tweak it, as opposed to a more rigid standard is, then you're not in conformance with the zoning, and now you have to resubmit a zoning application. You got to spend 3.5 months going through a rezoning to go, I want to drop one lot, and then you got to resubmit a preliminary plat. That's going to take you 2 months. You got to then submit your final plat, and so a year later, they finally have approval to reduce it by one lot. And so the purpose of that language is to allow flexibility, and we try to describe it in PDDs with a major versus a minor, but there's a judgment call on the part of the staff, and what staff looks for is, what are those important, critical, hot button issues? Are you going up on lots, or are you dropping a lot? And that's kind of how we look at it. And so by doing that, we provide flexibility. It's not to say that everybody on the commission or council is going to agree with every decision, but we try to be fairly conservative. If we're not sure, we're going to run you back through, and I think the developers here will tend to tell you that. Yeah, they'll both probably nod maybe. If staff's not sure, we're going to run you back through. But that streamlines the process, and that provides flexibility, and so we find that balance between having enough detail on the zoning with the master plan to get a feel for what's going to happen, but providing flexibility to deal with some of those things that come up in actual engineering design. And so again, to go back maybe to clarify Commissioner Evans' point, when they come in for those civil drawings, we compare it to the approved plat, but it's also compared to the zoning. And so from our perspective, the concept here that we talked about is, you may recall the critical issue is, we need enough off-street parking to ensure can accommodate vehicles, whether it's near a mail kiosk or not. But then also there was going to be this green space that was open and shared by all the property owners because they don't have yards. And the language they came up with, this isn't something else we have, so there's not a template for what it has to say, was intended to capture that. Staff is comfortable that it captures the concept when you use the zoning and the plat and the language to give those assurances. If the commission doesn't think so, you can certainly recommend a change of that, But I will say that staff feels like if we're comfortable with it, we tend to show deference to the applicant because they're the ones who have to enforce that going forward with their residents, as opposed to some language that we think may be better, but that as they've dealt with these issues tend to create problems. So from staff's perspective, we feel like the language adequately captures what you've got. It's this common area that's got this open space, but there's parking in it, and that's generally what it does and references the pieces. It's always got to comply with the zoning, minor amendments, and the plat as it goes forward.
Okay, well, thank you. That gives me a better understanding of the process. Thank you.
All right, anybody have anything else? All right, seeing no further questions, I think this was a really good conversation on this, and I thank staff for their responses on that. If there's no other questions or comments, so entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we approve PC 2017-033.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Outlaw. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ray. Any other comments? All right, call.
Just a comment. In the staff recommendation, it includes a condition, but I think if we approve this as presented, it will include that condition. Okay.
Yes.
No further comment.
All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda, discussion regarding the APA Texas Chapter 2017 conference. Asked for this to be put on our agenda. Those of us that attended the conference, if you have any comments or some of the classes you took and some of the things that you learned, this is the time to bring them up if there's any discussion points for future meetings or anything along those lines. So, gentlemen?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll start out and add my thank you. I'm glad to see you sent the letter forward to the city. I think that was a great opportunity, especially for the new guy. I attended track one of their short course for officials, and I learned quite a bit about that I need to know to sit up here and do the right job, why we do it, how we do it, and things like that. And I really, I'm really glad the city gave us that opportunity. My only feedback, and I think I've already told Bryce, I think it would have been beneficial if I had stayed for full day on Friday. So maybe if we look when, of course, I guess we've already done next year's budget. I don't know how some of the others that attended felt, but I think there were still some things there. And of course, going till 5 o'clock and trying to drive back from Frisco, that would have caused another night in the hotel, but I think that might have been worth it. But
And I'll add on to that, I stayed for one of the afternoons, the legislative update, and so I wound up leaving about 3 o'clock, and it took me till 5:30 to get south of Dallas.
But had no issues. Staff took care of the registration, the hotel, and all that, and it was all pretty seamless. So thank you very much.
I'll comment too, just to publicly acknowledge the city staff for the planning. It was seamless. It was easy, just like getting up and getting a cup of coffee. So appreciate the city approving us to expend the funds that were expended for that. I know we don't have a lot of money as a city, but I continue to think our presence at these conferences are good and educational, and I hope we can continue it in the future. And again, thanks to the staff and thanks to the city for allowing us to go.
All right, I'll just close on that then. Ernie, you have any comments? Okay. You know, I really took to heart the keynote speaker there about creating a sense of place in our community, and I think that's something that we kind of intuitively been working toward as a community, and something I think we need to continue to work on and as we move forward. I attended the Parks and Trails classes, and you know, the big thing that came out of that for me was that, you know, the role of parks and trails is changing, evolving, and it is becoming more important in communities, and that you know, we need to continue to be flexible to adapt to changing trends and changing demographics as well. Again, I stayed a little bit late after lunch. I did the legislative update, and just a couple of comments on that is that you know, they had over 8,000 bills that were filed in the legislature this past session. 1,300 of them were deemed to impact cities. 80% of those were considered to have a negative impact. 401 bills were planning and development related. Out of those, 43 passed, and 14 of them were considered to be bad, 16 neutral, and the rest were good. And some interesting comments came about from some of the discussions about that. And one of the interesting issues that we talked about was also the bill that was passed about the free use of our right-of-ways for small cellular network deployment, and some of the concerns that that's bringing forward. Of course, that's nothing on P&Z, but it was an interesting discussion on you know, how the legislature seems to be these last couple of sessions intent on taking away power and authority from the cities, and you know, not something that you would expect from a so-called conservative-led government, but that's a whole nother discussion, probably best not held on the dais up here. All right, are there any other comments regarding that?
Maybe just as an information item on that note, you may recall that some of you may know that council approved a small cell ordinance prior to the effective date of that. A lot of credit for that goes to Dan and Charlie, who really helped us to scramble to put that in place to be able to have some control over that. So thanks to them.
All right, and finally, we had staff pass out the updated discussion requests. Bryce and Channery and I went through that this morning in our morning meeting, and we looked at some of the things that have been on there, and we kind of felt that they were not really planning and zoning related, and so we went ahead and deleted those from the discussion list. You know, going forward, you know, I'd like to focus on items that are specific to planning and zoning. If any commissioner has a request for information or other things, you know, one of the things that we did have is the sewer line update for the Woman Hollering Creek, and what we're going to look at doing is that when something is brought to council, that Bryce is just going to send us out an email with a link to the appropriate video and an approximate timestamp, and we can look at that at our leisure instead of burning a whole lot of time in a meeting, and focus on getting the work done here that we need to get done. And finally, I've handed everybody a copy of the little note of thank you that I'm going to send to the mayor and to council, just thanking them for their support and be willing to invest and expend funds to help provide us with some professional training to increase our knowledge base and help us deal with the challenges of the growth that we're experiencing. And with that, I guess we'll move on to the next item. Item 5B, Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws. Something that we've brought up a couple of times about concerns about the bylaws. So we've talked about updating them. I think it's time that we look at moving forward on that. And what I'd like to propose to my fellow commissioners is that we look at creating a subcommittee, come up with some ideas, come up with a rough draft. We'll of course, let legal and staff look it over, and then bring it back to the commission as a body for discussion and final revisions, and then forward it on to council for final approval. If you guys are okay with that, you know, I'd see if there's any volunteers to help me out with this. Obviously, we can't have a quorum during this because then we have to do all the public notifications. So I'd certainly like to see one or two commissioners be willing to help out with this, and we'll meet separately and then provide notes to staff as to what the meetings were and their contents.
I'll help you with that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Outlaw. Mr. Burrow, we talked about it. Are you still interested? Okay, then we'll form a subcommittee. It'll be myself, Commissioner Burrow, and Commissioner Outlaw, and we'll keep staff posted on when we're meeting and give you guys the opportunity to attend as well, and maybe you'll even be so kind as let us use a meeting room somewhere to be able to do that.
We're glad to do that.
Okay. All right, requests and announcements. Request by commissioners to place items on future planning and zoning agenda. Okay, no requests. All right, I will mention here that we will be having in December our Capital Improvements Advisory Committee meeting. It will be our semi-annual meeting, and that the impact fee discussion meeting we'll tentatively have scheduled for January. Anything else? Announcements by commissioners, city community events attended and to be attended. All right, I'll throw one more thing out here on this. Coming up next, or on the 29th, the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, TxDOT is having a public hearing over in the Schertz Civic Center, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Regarding the proposed FM 15-18 widening between IH-10 and 78. And they're looking for public comments and public feedback on that. Announcements by staff.
So we recently received 5 new site plans, and I will give a quick presentation of each. The first one is Lot 19, Block 1 of the Tri-County Development Park. It's located at 7377 Door Lane. They have an existing building, and they're proposing to add 3 overhead dock doors. There is some clouding. It's hard to see, but they're proposing some dock doors, 1 in the front and 2 to the rear of the existing building. No other changes were proposed besides the 3 dock doors. The second site plan is for the Intercoastal Contractors, Lot 2. It was incorrectly stated as Lot 4 in the agenda. However, it's actually Lot 2. Located on FM 482, approximately 2,645 feet east of FM 2252 and FM 482. They are proposing a 2,000 square foot office and warehouse building and an area for RV storage. This is the Intercoastal Contractors Lot 3, located at FM 482, approximately 2,645 feet east of FM 2252 and FM 482. The proposal for this lot is a 51,500 square foot office / warehouse building, and they are also proposing a 4,800 square foot workshop in the rear. This is the smaller workshop being proposed. The Cowstone subdivision, Lot 4, located at 3600 FM 3009, southwest side of FM 3009 at the intersection of Green Valley Road. The proposal is for a 12,000 square foot, 1-story medical building. And the last site plan that we received is for Cowstone subdivision. This is Lot 3, located at 3600 FM 3009 on the same area, southwest side of FM 3009 at the intersection of Green Valley Road. The proposal for Lot 3 is a 22,944 square foot, 2-story medical building.
All right, does anybody have anything else? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, adjourned at 6:43. It's not our shortest meeting, but we did pretty good.